Well, here's the thing. I was thinking just this morning. I said, I need to do that show again because now I always played Twain at 70, and now I am 70. So I don't need the makeup. You know, I just do me.
Well, that cuts down the prep time by at least 45 minutes.
Oh, yes. It was a good hour and a half to do the makeup, and if I had done it like of a Hollywood standard, it'd probably been like 4 hours to put in.
Our guest today on Brownsville Matters is the person sitting across from me today who usually does the interviewing.
Yeah, it's very strange to be on the other side of this.
It is. I feel that as well. But let me just describe to everyone your background and the slightest thumbnail of your many accomplishments. Mm-hmm. Dr. W.F. Strong is a Fulbright scholar and professor of communication with expertise in intercultural communication, communication law, and storytelling. He earned his Ph.D. from the University of Arizona in 1985.
Wow.
When I believe you were 12, right?
Yeah, 85. Right.
He previously taught at Texas A&M University, Oregon State University, Texas Southmost College, and the University of Texas Pan Am before joining the faculty at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. His courses include the history of communication law and ethics, as well as great American oratory. He also teaches a course on the history of classical Greco-Roman rhetoric.
Wow, that's a big one.
That's a big one.
They flock to that, I want to tell you.
Yeah. Do you teach it all in linear B? He also teaches the course on the history of his research and teaching focus on historical critical methodologies, especially his work on Mark Twain during the age of imperialism. That seems to have a resurgence as well. His recent audio book recordings include The Essential J. Frank Doby and Remember the Alamo. Dr. Strong is a narrator for audio and has narrated hundreds of stories converted from the Handbook of Texas. WF grew up working on farms and ranches in South Texas, and so has had a long connection with the Texas soil, as did his ancestors who farmed and ranched in North Texas for more than a century. That's a long time to farm.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
Yes.
2 of his distant relatives signed the Texas Declaration of Independence. His familial history has nurtured his love for the vibrancy of Texas culture, both historical and modern. You can find his books, Stories from Texas and Stories from Texas Volume 2 on Amazon. And you can find his podcasts of Stories from Texas on NPR and the most popular podcast platforms. After cutting down the 27 pages of your bio.
Wow. You can see from that I've problem focusing.
I see.
I'm just kind of all over the place.
Well, when I first met you long ago, you were in one of the sequences of your explorations of Mark Twain or Samuel Langhorne Clemens.
I was thinking of that just this morning.
And so I do have a out of the chute question for you.
Okay.
Have you ever been able to reconcile or even forgive Samuel Clemens for not having been born in Texas?
And not only was he not born in Texas, he never came to Texas.
What?
Yeah, it's rather shocking.
It is shocking.
But he did own land in Texas.
Ah, well, there is that connection to the soil then.
And you know where he owned land? Just a bit of trivia.
No, I don't.
Up around Archer City, Texas, where McMurtry is from.
Oh, well, there must be something in the dirt there.
And in fact, I have a letter from Larry McMurtry because I wrote to him and I sent him a copy of a letter that Twain had written to the county treasurer of that county because he had a man there who was supposed to pay the taxes on the land. And he didn't, and the land went into almost foreclosure, and Twain had to come in and save the land that he owned. And he wrote a letter to the county treasurer or clerk to explain why this had happened. He had a great line there, by the way. He said that I paid that man to pay you, and he absconded with the money, and if I ever find him, He will beg for brimstone, and he will beg in vain. Very beautiful Twainian line. So anyway, so I wrote to McMurtry. I sent him a copy of this letter, and I said, it may not, this may be news to you, I'm not sure, that you're not the only famous author to have owned land in Archer County, Texas. And he wrote back to me. He said, no, I didn't know that, and I'm glad to know, and I'm going to check into it, see if we maybe own some of the same land. I never heard anything about that.
Yeah.
But that's the only connection that Twain had to Texas that I know of. He does. I mean, once in a while he'd refer to, a Texas cowboy or something in his writings, but strangely he never came here, and he was a lover of tall tales and all that.
Oh, so much so.
And so you would think that he would have managed to make it here, but mostly he was out in Nevada and in California. He escaped the Civil War because his brother was appointed to be to some government post out in Nevada in Carson City. Uh-huh. And so he went with his brother, and that's how he got his start in writing those Western stories.
Yeah, and his connection to print work stems from an early age. There's a photo of him at, I think, 15, holding a typeset bar,
yes,
spelling out his name.
Yes. Yeah. He was of the old school. He was an apprentice in journalism and started as a print set man. A very, very early age. And then from there he became a kind of a cub reporter, as we used to call them. And he said he got his real start to journalism when he was in California. He was assigned to cover the wagon trains coming into California from, they're crossing the vast mountains and deserts, and he would go out and get a list of the people who died along the way, because that made for good. Say, if it bleeds, it leads. It worked then, it works now. But he would say, so I get a list of them, and then I would add a few names to make it more dramatic.
Along with the stories that would ostensibly be part of that story.
Yeah.
And when we first met, you were doing presentations as Mark Twain in one-man shows.
Yes.
What was the process that led you to say, well, I'm into Mark Twain,
so I'll do him.
I'll do him. Was it that quick?
Yeah, and it was very brave of me, actually, I think, because I did it when I was 19. And I started doing it in college, but it was fitting because it was the bicentennial year. So there was this great call for revisiting the great characters in American history. I also did Lincoln, by the way.
Oh.
And so I did Twain, and I did kind of I was at Abilene Christian University at the time, and I did a one-man show there at the university to maybe 100 people, but it went very well. People really liked it. I had a professional, do my makeup. So there I was, 19, trying to be 70, and so you just had to suspend disbelief and go with it. But my major thing was always to try to capture the persona of Twain, to channel the persona, and don't worry too much about whether I looked his age or whatever. It went really well. And so I've probably done the Twain thing about 100 times, that show, you might call it. And because it's in my long-term memory, I can do it anytime. You could ask me to do it tonight, and I could do it because it's all memorized it's all memorized, and I could do probably an hour and 15 minutes without needing any kind of break.
And you wrote this yourself?
I based it on, Twain's, all of his lectures were written down. He was like the premier stand-up comedian of his time, except it was in storytelling form. Today he might have a harder time because some of his stories were, 10 minutes. But there are people like that. They're liked, and people will sit for some comedians like Bill Burr. They'll listen to him tell a 10-minute story because he's so good at it.
Right.
So, but he was the number one speaker in America in his time. Number one, paid. He made most money. He made $500 a lecture, which was huge.
Wow.
You know, it was really enormous in his heyday. So anyway, I just used his actual lectures, the things he actually did, and incorporated them into a stand-up show. I used some of his letters, and I incorporated other things. But Hal Holbrook had done the same thing. You know, he was the A-list star of this sort of thing. Obviously, I was C-list over here, but
well, at 19,
yeah.
I think in terms of makeup, especially, it's much easier at 19 to look 70 than where we're at now at 70, trying to look 19.
Oh, absolutely.
Which I think most of the population is engaged in.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I was thinking just this morning. I said I need to do that show again because. Now, I always played Twain at 70, and now I am 70. So I don't need the makeup, you know, I just do me.
Well, that cuts down the prep time by at least 45 minutes.
Oh, yes. It was a good hour and a half to do the makeup, and if I had done it like of a Hollywood standard, it'd probably been like 4 hours to put in all the, what do they call it, the plastics that you need.
The prosthetic makeup?
The prosthetic makeup, yeah.
Well, and the great start from that was Dustin Hoffman in Little Big Man. Remember that? When he was in all of those prosthetics to look 90 for his interview. Probably wouldn't have to go that far.
No.
Yeah.
But that was the fun thing about doing Twain at that age, because he's just reminiscing about his life, and I kind of used the 70th birthday speech as the core, because he actually gave a 70th birthday speech in New York to a huge audience, and he reminisced about how he had managed to live 70 years. And one of the things I relate to, by the way, that he said in that talk is he said, the great thing about being 70 is when you get to be 70, you never again need the previous engagement plea. When someone invites you to a party or a dinner, you never need to say that you have a previous engagement. You say, I am grateful to be remembered, and I am grateful to be honored with your request, but I am 70.
I'm 70.
And I would sit by my fire and read my book and take my rest.
And people accept that pretty readily.
Yes.
Yeah.
But in that same intonation, you see how 70 was 80 then.
Oh, at least.
So for him, he was feeling 80. I'm tired. But he also loved to smoke. He smoked up to the bitter end. It's probably what killed him. He got emphysema and stuff.
Yeah.
But he would say that he never missed an opportunity to smoke. He said, I came into this world blowing smoke rings, and I shall go up. No, excuse me. I came into this world asking for a light, and I shall go out of it blowing smoke rings.
Probably the first cigar he ever saw was the doctor and the nurse. And let me try that. So when you were young, apparently you were very close to exploration. When did you first discover, in terms of literary exploration, when did you first discover Mark Twain?
In my dissertation, in the foreword, I have a dedication to my fourth grade teacher. And she did what a lot of teachers do today as well. And during the course of that year, she read to us. In one semester, we got the Adventures of Tom Sawyer, and the other was the Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. So in that one full year, I got Twain, and she implanted that in me. She put in the Twain platform into my mind. Also, you might say, taught me that dry humor and appreciation for the storytelling in that unique way. And actually, it was when I was in the 8th grade that I read The Innocents Abroad, and I made the connection, oh, this is that guy.
Right.
And so it was way back then that I developed that interest. And so when it came time to write my dissertation years later, well, I'd already written my master's thesis on Twain. And I had published a couple of articles on Twain in academic journals. So when I wrote my dissertation, I was able to quote myself from my own published sources.
And what an honor that is.
What an honor it was.
Yes.
I was even able to say, as W.F. Strong so brilliantly pointed out, and my director said, let's not get cocky now.
Adequately pointed out.
But yeah, it was about the humor naturally. And, from you've written a dissertation, so you need some kind of diversion to keep you to task.
Right.
And so fortunately, as I was researching Twain, I went to Berkeley to study the Twain papers at Berkeley. I went to Vassar to study the papers there. There's a good collection of Twain papers there. And so he's constantly entertaining you because everywhere there's humor.
Yeah. And how did you find humor as a lad growing up in Texas, working on ranches? How was that atmosphere conducive, or was it at all conducive to humor?
Well, absolutely. The ranchers and cowboys that I was around, farmers, they're all great storytellers. And they're all part of that dry wit that Twain. We talk about the Texans being exaggerators, but I found kind of the opposite, that they understate things, which is a kind of exaggeration in reverse,
right?
Right,
especially some tumultuous story presented with understatedness.
With understated, yeah. Like there's a story of a cowboy who's riding his horse, and he suddenly comes upon the Grand Canyon. First time, he'd never seen it before. Suddenly there's the Grand Canyon, and he says, well, something's gone on here. So
what the heck happened here?
So beautiful understatement, And even Twain himself, when it was reported in the press, as happens today, that with celebrities that he had died, and they came to him and he said, well, the reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated. That's understatement.
Yeah. And so where did these telling of tales take place? Around campfire, at the general store, coffee shop? No,
mostly I would say that it was either at break while working, when we're putting hay in the barn, and we'd stop and have a break and have a smoke, and there'd be some old farmer telling us, he said, this reminds me of this kid that used to work here. And, so you get these stories, and many of them, of course, I can't repeat here.
Yeah.
They were off color and everything, but not always. Sometimes they were just good stories, good memories, but it's more about learning the framing of a story and how it's not in the matter of the telling, it's in the manner of the telling. And so you learn it's about the persona that's doing the telling that matters. And that's why, for instance, I have a lot of stories about my brother Redneck Dave that I do on Stories from Texas. And it's more about his manner and his way of putting things into language in a unique way that makes it interesting and fun and funny.
Especially because that lends itself to progressing the story itself. There's not a deep dive into emotional responses and emotional expressive in the characters that we talk about, that we tell about. It is assumed that the listener starts to create that inference in the way the story about that character, that person that we know or knew, progresses. It's very different, and storytelling is branched out into a deep emotional exploration as well as just telling a story.
Yes, it could be entertainment. It can be therapy.
Oh, very much so. I think going back thousands of years, it tends to be cathartic. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that makes for good storytelling, I think, is that the first word out of a storyteller's mouth, the first sentence, will often spin your head around because you're saying, "What? What?" It's like my brother Redneck Dave would say things like, "I don't believe in banks." And you have to say, well,
they do exist.
This has got to be good. So, you have to follow up. Why don't you believe in banks? And then you find out, it's a long story, but it's a good one.
That's right. That's the hook.
That's the hook.
Yeah. You've yanked somebody's chain with that first
with
phrase.
That first phrase.
Yeah.
It kind of blows your mind. You say, "Whoa, I got to go down this rabbit hole, see what they're
taking
about."
a break now. So you did the usual things then as a ranch hand.
Build fences.
Use mesquite.
Lots of mesquite posts.
Barbed wire.
Barbed wire.
Sorry, I forgot my pronunciation.
Or is barbed wire.
Barbed wire.
Well, that's where actually one of the first stories from Texas commentaries I wrote was on what I called mispronunciating in Texas, where we looked at the words that are commonly mispronounced, or as some Texans say, we pronounce them correctly, they get them wrong.
Of course.
Right? Well, it's their problem, not our problem.
Yeah, we've streamlined pronunciation so much by taking out syllables.
Yeah, that's very important.
Y'all, all, jeet, which means did you eat?
Did you eat?
Yes, of course.
Or we take, sometimes we stretch them. You know, you have what's called the Texas diphthong.
Yeah.
So the word like jet becomes jet.
Yeah. Well, it sounds more eloquent with the extra syllable,
much
doesn't
more
it?
beautiful.
Yeah.
Much
yeah.
So so in that vein, I was looking at words that we typically mispronounce, so to speak. But what's interesting in my own background is that since I worked around people who pronounced things like bavoir, when I saw it in print and it said barbed wire, I thought,
what is that?
Well, they got that wrong.
Yeah.
They misspelled that. And it was the first time I had that epiphany. So, oh, damn, that's what it means. That's the way it's printed, and that's probably the way it's said, really. Another one that threw me off like that was I was raised with, I had a big chest in my room, and it was a Chester drawers. Did you have Chester drawers?
I had Chester drawers.
Chester drawers.
Yeah.
So then when I saw
he was also my neighbor, by the way.
Yeah, I just thought Chester made drawers and Bob made wire. I thought that's the way it was in the world.
Right. That's right.
But chest of drawers, when I saw it in print, I said, there it is.
Now that makes sense.
So I got corrected. That was part of the fun of discovering the beauty of dialect.
And in that vein, what led you into teaching, especially at your university experience? Was that a natural outgrowth of your grad school studies, your scholarship? Oh,
I knew. I was a big reader always. I was, certainly what we would call today a nerd, but I was a big reader early. And so when I went to college, I knew by the time I was a sophomore, I knew that I wanted to be a professor because I saw that a lot of these professors there at the university were old. I said, man, it looks like a safe job. They live forever. And they looked happy. They said, I thought, my God, these people get paid to read. I want that job where I'm paid to read and study and pursue the things that I personally love. And then I saw one of the senior professors that he even said in class, I can teach whatever I want.
Wow.
He said, he was an English professor. He said, he said, as long as I can connect it to literature, I can teach whatever I want. And everything is connected to literature. He said, so if I want to teach a course on medical literature, I can do that. And I thought, wow, that's enormous freedom.
Yeah. And you'd already sussed out that this profession was easy on the body. It's not the same as working in the dusty Texas heat doing fencing.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I think so many professors have that story. I worked summer roofing, and that convinced me I was going to stay in college. Not necessarily be a professor, but I was going to stay in college.
For the rest of my life.
Yeah, forever. Well, I always said early on, what do you got, time or money in your profession? What do you got, time or money? And because I had a brother, and passed away a few years ago, who was a lawyer, and obviously he did very well in life. He loved his profession. He was valedictorian of everything, I used to say. Very focused early on getting to the law. And but he had a lot of money, but no time. Oh yeah, he took time as he could, but his love was really work. And I said, well, I don't have his money by far, but I'm rich in time. And as a professor, I figured out, I said, well, I can get creative with this time. I just need things like a Fulbright grant so I can travel. So I applied for a Fulbright grant to teach in Africa because I always wanted to go to Africa. So I went for a year, paid for by teaching in Africa with this wonderful grant.
Where did you go in Africa?
I went to what used to be the University of London in Nigeria, because Nigeria was a colony of England. And their premier university there was it was originally University of London. And now it's University of Ibadan, about 200 miles north of Lagos. And it's beautiful. It was the size of Texas A&M. The campus itself was enormous. And most all the faculty lived on campus in houses that had been built by the Brits when they were there. So
very old school.
Very old school. Yeah. It was a great experience. And I had, but here was the difference. I mean, talk about money, is I was paid about $4,000 a month by U.S. government funds. I got my money from the U.S. Embassy. I could just go there and write a check, and they were my bank. And but the average professor there was making more like $200 a month. They got free housing and stuff, and most of them had little consulting gigs and things. They pieced together a living, but they called me Bill Gates because I was so rich.
And in also that same line, you do a lot of voiceover work. You do speaking engagements. Do you have a type of speaking engagement that you dread the most?
Well, no, not really. I guess I don't dread a speaking engagement where I'm talking about my books or something like that. I don't mind that. A little bit. I get a little bit fearful when I go to a high school because I don't think they're going to be terribly interested in what I do, the sort of things I talk about.
Oh, yeah.
And, I mean, I don't, it isn't that they're rude, I just don't think they quite get it. One of the worst things that ever happened to me was being invited to do Twain at a high school. And that humor is very different from the humor they're used to. It's very enigmatic, and it's tied to his period quite often. And a lot of the humor of today is not what Twain did, which was either exaggerative, cartooning. It's called cartooning, where you see it in your mind's eye, and it's highly visual. He'd say things like the cowboy went out and got on the Mustang and wanted to break it. And the first thing the Mustang did is he let his back sag down real low, and he arched it suddenly, and he shot the cowboy 180 yards into the air. So, that's cartooning, right. Warner Brothers cartoon. And so, that doesn't really excite them terribly. So it's more of the doing Twain for the wrong audience. Or people would say, why don't you do Twain for my high school class of 20 people? And so I finally decided that the only way I'll do Twain is in a professional setting with a real stage and a real theater, so that it frames it in a kind of professional setting. But to do it piecemeal, no, that scares me.
Yeah, it's easier to connect in a theatrical setting with the wide experience of the audience that you'll have there.
Do you ever have the dream, and most everybody has a dream, especially professors, I think they have the dream of they have to give a lecture and they are not ready, they can't find their notes, or they're naked, or do you ever have a dream like that?
Yes. For me, that recurring nightmare, I think that's the clinical description. And some people use that with me personally, by the way, is being on stage, playing an incredibly difficult piece with great ease, and the guitar begins to fall apart.
Oh, no.
and it's always a brand new instrument that was extraordinarily expensive. You know, you have to do a second mortgage and sell your car just to get this amazing instrument. And as you're playing, it begins to literally come apart in your hands.
Yes, well, mine is somewhat like that, except it's leading up to. Like I'll have someone will call me and say, well, you're in Austin, and so you're supposed to do that Twain performance tonight that you promised. And I'm thinking, I don't even remember. I don't remember promising that. And they'll say, but you're going to be here, right? We've got 500 people. Oh, yes, I'll be there. And I'm thinking, I don't have a suit. I don't even makeup. How am I going to do this?
Acting.
So I'll do Twain at 50, okay?
There, right.
There is actually a guy that I read about that, because Holbrook kind of made his thing of Twain at 70. That was his fame, was just doing, and he made a boatload of money off of doing Twain. But there's some guy who put a twist on it, and he just did Twain at 50, and recounted his life from that point. And it's a good place to start because Twain published Huckleberry Finn when he was 50. And that's considered his greatest work. And I always like to make a point whenever I'm talking about Twain to say, Twain didn't publish his first really great story, the story that went viral, that put him on the map until he was 35 years old. And, so if you're young and you're thinking, it's too late for me, well, he was 35. And he was 50 when he published his greatest work, was considered his great work.
And he didn't go bankrupt until his 60s.
Until later, yeah. There's time for you, too, to ruin your finances. So, in fact, he used to say that a lot, that, that you don't know where genius will be discovered. He said, in fact, most of the time, genius is not discovered by the people close to the genius, because they're too close to him, they don't see it, and they can't get their arms around it. Yeah. Genius is usually discovered. And he would say that it may be that the greatest writer who ever lived never picked up a pen, that he spent his life herding sheep in Afghanistan, or the greatest musician never picked up an instrument.
And everybody around that person just perceives of them as, oh, that's Earl.
Yeah.
How can he create something, or in that neck of the world, neck of the woods? Well, maybe that term does apply to the world. I mean, if it applies to woods, why not the world? In any case, that neck of the woods, Bathsheba, she's not very good. She keeps drawing these strange hieroglyphics, yes, which turned out to be modern group theory and math. So these sorts of explorations for you in literature, you've concentrated on the great output of Mark Twain and the idea that what we study informs our own character. In my experience with you, your character is very much directed towards observation and comment, and not without a very strong sense of the absurd and how to communicate that in an understated way. Do you think that that course of study and familiarity has informed you as a person?
Oh, absolutely. I in some ways, am a kind of minor extension of Twain because he had such an influence on me, and I. Instead of writing my own stories, although I have a few of my own stories, so to speak, when I write about Redneck Dave or things that are biographical like that. But I collect the stories and say, well, I may not be good at creating stories the way Twain created stories, but I can at least collect the great stories. And that's what I've done through my Stories from Texas that I do for Texas Standard, which I am incredibly grateful for because they put me on the air twice a month, and I get to do virtually whatever I want. They just give me carte blanche. Here's your turn, 5 minutes on the air, tell the story.
I think there's a lot of trust there.
There's a lot of trust.
There's a lot of trust there.
But it wasn't there in the beginning. They used to fact check me a lot, and we would argue over words and phrases and things I could and couldn't say.
Yeah, that seems to be a contradiction, though. If you're telling stories about Texas, do you really want to check those facts?
Well, some of them it's more about the wording. I give you an example that I was going to use the word pinche. And pinche has kind of two meanings. It means one way is to mean you're cheap, and that's the context in which I was using it. But of course, it also is a four-letter word, so to speak.
Right.
And so there was a big discussion about whether I could use that or not, and they decided against it. So we went with something else. But some discussions like that. I'll give you another one. I was going to use the expression Nazi police. Or a grammar Nazi, rather.
Grammar Nazi, yeah.
And they said, "No, you can't say that." I said, "What? I'm going to offend the Nazis."
That's what I was thinking. That's the
who's
one
be
cadre of
bitching about this
of world society that if it offends the Nazis, maybe it's okay.
So I had to change it to grammar police. But these things are rather minor, obviously, compared to the ability to do whatever I want, pretty much. And they are helpful once in a while. They'll say, "I'm not sure about you have the author name right on this story," or something. So it's nice to have someone catch you before you make a fool of yourself. It's very nice.
I could have used that for the last 65 years, actually.
And that's why I was very honored, by the way, to be asked to do the audiobook of Doby's collections, because strangely there had never been an audiobook of Doby, and Doby is one of the great storytellers, folklorists in Texas history. I mean, you go to Austin, there are buildings named after him, the Doby Dorm.
Right.
He's a lot of campuses have Doby influence, and you have the Doby Ranch where writers can go and do. Even to this day, they give you, there's about 10 scholarships. I think it's twice a year that they let you stay in the Doby cabins and for free, and you're given a little stipend, and mostly it's just freedom of isolation to write.
That's an old story where writers really need to have that isolation to focus in on the story and the storytelling. What is your inspiration, the spark that causes you to create one of your stories?
Usually it's just a little something I come across. Sometimes it's in reading, sometimes it's something somebody says, and it's often just a phrase that is, to me, bait. Says, I need to chase that.
Literary clickbait.
Yeah, it's clickbait. I say, I got to chase that. That's interesting. Like I read one the other day where it said, the Stetson Hat was created because of tuberculosis.
Oh, talk about a hook line.
I know. So I say, wow. How?
Yes. What is the connection there?
That's almost like I don't believe in banks. What? And so I chased it. And you want to know?
Of course. Hi, KXIQ listeners. This is Michael Quantz with the Brownsville Society for the Performing Arts, here to tell you about our podcast, Brownsville Matters. Everyone in Brownsville has a story to tell, and these are the stories. We broadcast these stories every Friday at 5 p.m. and every Sunday at 3 p.m. on KXIQ 105.1 FM on your radio dial. You can also catch these stories rebroadcast on our YouTube channel for Brownsville Society for the Performing Arts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and smash the notifications if you want more information about these stories that you watch and listen to.
Stetson, who created the Stetson Hat, he was in New York, and he was a hat maker, a hat designer, and he got tuberculosis. And his doctor said, "You need to get to a warmer climate, or you're going to die." And this is true of a lot of people with tuberculosis. They went out to Arizona just to get drier
Doc
climate.
Holliday.
Yeah, Doc Holliday. And so he went out he didn't go to Arizona, but he went out to eastern Kansas, western Missouri, I forget exactly where, but he went out to that part of the world. And he saw these cowboys with their bad hats. And he said, "I need to make a hat for these cowboys.
I need to fix this."
So he created, because he was out west, he designed what we think of now as the cowboy hat, the Stetson. And if he hadn't gotten tuberculosis,
wow. And that
probably
really
wouldn't have that hat.
Yeah, that really clarifies that line also, because one immediately jumps to the conclusion that the tuberculosis bacteria actually designed the hat.
Designed the hat, yeah. Well, this is in a book called "Everything is Tuberculosis," and it's got a lot of these great little stories in it. So a lot of what I come across because I'm reading, and I just see something particularly fascinating that I chase. And I'm always looking to bring to people that story behind the story, or as they used to say, the untold story. The rest of the story, as Paul Harvey called it.
Right.
So I'm looking for the story behind the story. And that's often more fascinating than the story itself.
Almost always.
How did this get to be? How did this come to be?
Right.
And sometimes I have stories in my mind for maybe a year before I have enough to make it work. Like
Do you work on it like throughout that time, or is it just something you ruminate on?
I just ruminate. I don't usually write it down. It's in my mind. And then sometimes when I'm driving around, I'm talking it out, and so people seeing me on the highway, they probably say, "Ooh, there's a guy who needs to go to the asylum."
Or he's on the phone.
Or he's on the phone, yeah. But I like to talk it out because it's going to be an oral story, and I want it to be oral in its nature. I don't want it to have the smell of the lamp, and I want it to have that texture of orality to it. So I try to keep it in that form before I commit it to paper. So to give you an example of one of those, is I was working on what I called Texas Euphemisms. I said, we got to have a series of things that are euphemisms. The one I started with was the Winter Texans. That's a euphemism unique to Texas. Let me just define euphemism as euphemisms are kind words. I know you know that, but just in case people listening haven't revisited their English grammar in a while. So it's kind words. And so Winter Texan is a nice thing. In Florida, they're snowbirds. That's kind of dysphemistic. That's rude. But this is a beautiful thing to say. I mean, what a lovely thing to allow people who are foreigners to Texas to be an actual Texan for a little while, And what an honor.
Yeah, and to couch it in a really nice term, snowbird.
So I started thinking, well, okay, there's one. But if I'm going to have a commentary, I've got to have
Several.
Number of these.
At least two.
Yeah, no, at least two. And another one I came across is with brisket, because in brisket you can order lean brisket, or you can order what they sometimes called a marbleized brisket.
That's a very fine description of fat.
Yeah, it's fat. But people don't want to buy fat, so you euphemize it with, marbleized or moist. Moist is another way. You want it moist, so
they still want to buy it.
Yeah,
but they'll only buy it if you term it in a certain way.
This but it's because brisket is. It isn't only sold in Texas, but it's what Texas is known for, brisket. And so to have that euphemism is uniquely a Texas euphemism. I've also liked to collect things that are outside of Texas, things named for Texas that are outside of Texas. Like in Canada, if you drive across what we would call a cattle guard, they call it a Texas gate. It's in the ground, but they call it a Texas gate.
And by the way, I've heard that no Canadians can actually cross those because of that name.
Because of that name.
Yeah. It's very confusing.
Well, in Norway, to go Texas means to go crazy. I mean, wild and crazy.
That's understandable.
Say, don't go all Texas on us now. You're going to go crazy.
Yeah, you might become a cowboy.
So it's interesting to see how the phrase, how the Texas name is used around the world. And so these are things that I just kind of collect until I have enough of them to do a commentary or story or hopefully enlightening perspective about them. That's fun. I'm always looking for the humor.
Indeed. And so when you have worked with the range of Texas characters, are there any that stands out to you? To me, there's a big range of characters, from youthful cowboys, which is a rare thing, to the elder farmers in the general store next to the potbelly stove drinking coffee and telling stories. Are there particular environments or particular people that you found really had an influence on your concept of what Texas is?
I guess the writings of Larry McMurtry, because his novels cover a wide range of Texas characters who are real people. And I wrote about this in my book, about how when I was a senior in high school, I came across McMurtry's book In a Narrow Grave, where he writes about the last time that he saw his uncle, who was much older and everything, and how he was probably about 6 months from dying was the last time he saw him. And anyway, he wrote an essay about him, about his coming to the house, and how they had one of those times where they walked him down to the car and it took 30 minutes to say goodbye at the car. And he had this phrase. He said he stood there in the great circular frame of the plains that had always contained him. And his writing about his uncle made me say, that's my uncle. It was the first time I made that connection that literature didn't have to be about long ago and far away. It could be about here. It could be about your people. And that's where it caught fire for me, because I said, oh, you can write literature about your people, and it can be literature.
Yeah, it becomes not simply a story, but a way of expressing a moment or a series of moments in life that gives you a sense of discovery and this incredibly deep feeling about that discovery and the realization that you've lived that and can experience life in similar ways.
That you have lived it.
Yeah.
When McMurtry wrote Lonesome Dove, which is his greatest work by most people's standards, the funny thing about it is he was trying to write a book to show that the life of the cowboy was brutal, and it was difficult, and it was ugly, and it was not to be romanticized. That it was ridiculous for people to be romantic about it and say, I'd love to be a cowboy. And they have no idea of how difficult it was to herd cattle and sleep in the mud
and rain
and the rain and herd those cattle through nasty through nasty flies and all this sort of stuff. Anyway, but the opposite occurred. People ended up having these two cowboys that they wanted to be. They romanticized them more than any other cowboys ever.
Right.
And everybody would have been happy to get on a horse with W.F. Call and Gus McCrae and herd cattle. They'd trade in those office jobs tomorrow to go herd cattle all the way to Wyoming.
Well, when I knew cowboys, true cowboys, it always seemed that they were incredibly grounded folks.
Oh, yeah.
That they had a particular view of life and the path that they were going to take. And it seemed to be dominated by the idea that all of that stuff, I really don't feel like I want to deal with that. And I'm going to herd cattle, and I'm going to sleep in the rain, and I'm going to have muddy boots, and I'm going to have to use that little iron stump out in front of the general store to scrape them off before I go in. And
I remember bitching to a cowboy about how cold it was, and he said, "It's just weather."
Yes,
it's just weather.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes it's hot, sometimes it's cold. It's just weather.
Yeah.
What are you bitching about?
And there's that acceptance of the hard parts of that choice.
Yeah.
What else do you want? This is the way it's going to be, so you might as well get good with it.
I learned a lot of good lessons from everything from plants to hunting to finance, from these guys. And I remember one guy we had to go buy a special wrench for a tractor because it had a flat tire in the field, and we had to go get a special wrench because we didn't have the right wrench, to get the tire off. So we had to go to the tractor store, not what we call the tractor store today, but we had
the store that had tractor things.
Yeah, we had to go there, and I remember he picked it up. It was like this big wrench, and it was like $25.
Wow!
And it was, to me, an enormous. And I whistled at the price, and he said, "You think that's a lot?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "It'd take me half a week to pay for that." He said, "Well, try to make one."
Yeah, complaints were not viewed very favorably, were they? Especially from the young.
But they were really good about making it a lesson. He'd say, "Try to make one." He said, "A lot of success in life is having the right tools."
Oh, yeah. Hugely. Anybody that works with tools.
And having a guitar that doesn't fall apart.
Yeah.
While you're playing it.
That's a thing.
I wanted to do a story, by the way, on the shortest highway in Texas, which is in the Texas State Cemetery.
I didn't even know there was a state cemetery.
Yeah. You have to be important to be buried there.
I don't stand a chance.
Yeah. Well, it's possible as long as you've
know the right people,
done something very Tex-centric in your life, and you know the right people. Like Barbara Jordan is buried there.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be even close to that
but
level of
But
accomplishment.
there are not in that rank, you might say. There are plenty of people who served in government and want to be buried there. Probably Willie Nelson could be buried there.
Oh, indeed,
if he wanted to be.
Yeah.
But anyway, there was a time where they were having a hard time keeping up with the. It's really about a quarter-mile road in the Texas State Cemetery, and they didn't have funding. And so the governor said, "Well, let's just make it a highway. And the highway department will have to take care of it." Yeah. So they made it a TxDOT road, and they have to take care of it. So it's kind of cool.
So how long is it?
It's about a quarter mile.
Quarter mile? Yeah. Very short.
Now they're having drag races out there, quarter mile.
Well, that probably won't disturb the residents very much. Yeah.
So I like the stories that are about the extremes, the deepest. I did one on the deepest cave in Texas. And
is that near Gorman Falls?
No, it's actually out towards Sanderson.
Oh, okay.
And they wouldn't tell me where it was exactly because it's on private land. They don't want people going there.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because there's a river at the bottom of it. There's an underground river. So it's really the guy who discovered the cave. Well, he didn't really discover it. They knew it was there, but he's mapped it, you might say. And he Bill Steele is his name, and I love it.
Great name.
He told me the river, it hits a wall, where we can see it come out from under a wall, and we can see it go past under another wall. And I said, "Where does it go?" And he said, "I don't know." He said, "But one of these days I'll get some scuba gear and we'll follow it." And it just blows my mind that these cavers. It's not enough to go as deep as you can go. They say, "Let's put on some scuba gear and go under the water and see where it goes."
Oh, exactly. That would not be my first inclination.
In the dark.
Yeah. Oh, pitch. I don't. Have you ever gone to a cave was in pitch black?
It's the kind of darkness that you can taste.
It is profound. You feel the darkness in your bones.
Feel it. but he said that they would go into caves where down in Mexico they have the kind of caves that are so big that they can go 3 days, and it's like reverse mountain climbing. They set up a base camp and everything. Right. He said, but we don't. He said we sit in the dark and eat and talk because we don't want to waste the batteries. So it's a very interesting life that they have there. But actually, Texas is a big caver's paradise. There's a lot of
That's
caves.
what I hear. Yeah.
And so if you're into caving, to be around Austin,
I'm
San
not
Antonio,
into caving.
I'm not into caving either.
Not at all.
Some of these people, they call them there's a name
Spelunkers?
Well, Spelunker, I'm thinking of the name within the caving grouping. They have these guys that are called like groundhogs or something. They love to go into the tiniest places that they can go and dig and go boldly where no one has ever wanted to go before.
And they don't come out with deep claustrophobic issues?
No, they don't have claustrophobia.
In
fact, Bill Still told me, he said, I don't have claustrophobia. I have the opposite. I feel like I'm hugged by Mother Earth.
Wow. Okay, maybe there might be some childhood circumstances that
He's
lead
more
to
claustrophilic, that he loves being captured in these tight spaces. But his deal is that and those are the people, by the way, those ones that are the diggers that get in trouble because they get into those tight spaces and find themselves, upside down, and they can't get out. They can't back up.
Lord.
Horror stories, real horror stories. They were down in Mexico once, and they had a guy who took a fall and died deep in the cave. And they had to go up 180 feet several times to get out of this cave. That's why they call it reverse mountain climbing. You climb on the way out. And he said they had to just bury the body there in the cave and come back for him later because there was no way. They had to come back for him when he was decomposed and lighter. Oh. When they could get him out.
Yeah.
So there's a macabre nature to the sad stories that go with this.
Yeah, it's not enhancing my view of spelunking at all.
Yeah. Well, I talked to Bill about the deepest cave in Texas, and he invited me to come caving. And I said, well, I'm a really big person, I don't think I will do well with caving.
It's not going to fit.
And he said, no, there's a lot of tall people. I said, well, I'm tall and fat, so I'll be a liability to you. So.
Well, you could, at this point, we could just say, I'm 70.
Yeah, I'm 70. I'm 70. But he's 75.
Oh, no. Wow. Yeah. That makes the whole story not very effective.
Because he's been caving all his life, and, you can imagine how that's a great way to keep yourself fit.
I guess, for some.
For some, yeah. So, but yeah, if I had a kind of criticism of myself when it comes to stories, is that I haven't been, like Doby, he used to go on long adventures out into Mexico and stuff on horseback, and truly get out among the people and live among the people and in rough circumstances. And I haven't done much of that. When I was a kid, yes, but not in my adult years. I've traveled a lot. I've gone to a lot of places. And I've hiked a lot, but I haven't really been out in the monte, as we say, and where collected the stories directly from the people.
Right.
I've done a lot of it in a literary sense, which has its value, but this would be, I've often said to myself, you need to get out more, So,
well, it's harder now, isn't it?
Yeah.
When we were young, that was just part of the condition of life.
Yeah.
You met these people that became intertwined into your everyday experience, and they were characters.
Yeah.
And those characters lent their stories to us, and the conditions were harder. You were out in the dusty Texas heat, stringing fences, and taking care of cattle and horses.
And truthfully, those characters don't exist as they used to.
No, there's all this. Everybody has all these creature comforts that when we were out in the plains of Texas doing ranch work, wasn't even a thought. It was, wow, that's Dick Tracy stuff. That kind of technology will never exist, especially in conjunction with those hats.
Well, and you have people today. Well, it was common, and you remember this, when we were young and even in our 30s, people would come up and say, "Hey, I got a story for you. I got to share a story for you," and that would happen a lot. You know, just at random. People would come up, I don't mean random people, but people you knew would come up and pull you aside and say, "I got a story for you." And, you know, you take 5 minutes to listen to the story. Sometimes good, sometimes not. But this is the way these stories were passed along. And now they're on the internet or they're in meme form. And people don't say so much, "I got a story," and say, "Did you see this?" And they'll hold out the phone so you can look at it.
Right.
And so the art of telling the story is not as common as it once was.
It's less of a social skill now, and it's more restricted to the people that do that storytelling online or in some other, hopefully artistic way, in sort of maybe even a cinematic way that, or musical way that people experience
we see
through the phone.
We see the professionals on stage, HBO specials, et cetera, telling stories.
Right.
And they're of the Twainian tradition, and that's why I love that they have the Twain Awards.
Right.
Because they are an extension of his style, which Hemingway called. He said that it was we didn't have a truly American style until Twain came along. Everything was an echo of the British style.
Right.
And he gave us Americanisms. Okay,
Very
it's an
much.
interesting perspective. And so. But now it's kind of the professionals doing it, and whereas it used to be that most everybody did some form of storytelling.
Yep.
And now, because of the way mass media and social media has taken over, even if you go to someone's dinner, half the people are on their phones and not listening to each other the way we used to. And they would listen to Grandma tell a story, but now, you know, they rush her through it and they get back to their phone. So it's a different dynamic and kind of sad.
Waiting for an ad to take a break.
Yeah, that's right. But at the same time, the storytelling has moved onto these platforms, and there is great storytelling there if you search it out. It's just not in our everyday life the way it used to be.
And it's not us when we socialize making those stories happen, relating to our experiences. And that's why I think elders are so wonderful to listen to when they tell their stories, because their whole lives frame that experience. And when they give us that experience, it's done in a way that really connects to us. I like the idea of the term resonate, and it really connects to us in a gut deep way. You know,
the Longfellow said, to have great storytellers, you must have great audiences, and what we don't have today are the people that are patient enough to listen to Grandma tell her story. And I used to say about my mother, she's a great storyteller if you don't care about chronology. Because she would just wander all over the place, but you have to love the wandering.
Right. Well, I mean, I can think of great Southern, or at least one great Southern writer that wasn't too concerned about chronology a lot. Faulkner, of course.
Yeah, Faulkner.
But I think that's kind of the core of the popularity of your storytelling too, is that when you have that interest in how that connects to us, that really doesn't make sense, but it kind of does, and I want to know more about that. And that is not only the start of your stories, but it allows for those side turns and those comments that are just as artful, just as entertaining, just as thought-provoking and enjoyable. And that's why we are greatly honored to also run Stories from Texas through the VSPA's KXIQ 105.1 FM radio station, and we do it more than once or twice a month. We do it twice a week.
Twice a week.
Twice
Awesome.
a week.
Thank you.
And we look forward to...
But I haven't gotten a check.
Well, you should read the fine print on all the contracts, and don't forget, you don't have to look at the backside of the page. Just the date and everything is good.
But I do have, with some frequency, I have radio stations call me up. They find me, little radio stations. They call me and say, "We like your stories. We would like to run them. Can we buy some or whatever?" And so I will. I'll say yes. I'll send you 25 stories or whatever, and you can run them as you wish. And I'll say well, what's your budget? They say, well, we don't really have a budget. I'll say, how about $10 a story? And they'll say, well, that's a little high.
Oh, no.
And then I'll say, all right, well, just use them for free. I don't care. Because it comes back. It sells books. I sell a lot of books. And so it comes back in other forms. So I don't worry about it too much. And I do this as a kind of love of Texas. Let me share Texas Lit. And when I got into this, I started doing it, of course, for our old NPR station here in Harlingen.
KMBH.
KMBH. And I wanted to do it really as a means of helping Texans understand that they had a great literature that they didn't know about, maybe, or maybe they suspected it, or maybe they were influenced by it. Things like Lonesome Dove. They've seen the miniseries, but maybe they don't know there's 4 books that the miniseries is tied to. And so the idea is to seduce them into reading, to get the core of this beautiful literature that goes back to Doby and Cowboys and stuff that they love. And I don't know how successful I've been at making that happen. But
I think a few tens of thousands of listeners and readers pretty much give us the data that we need to say that it's been pretty successful. Yeah.
So that was the original inclination, was to help people understand the beauty of the Texas Lit that was part of their lives, and perhaps they didn't even know. Certain expressions that exist in everyday life that can be tied back to literature, and then of course I got into the other things, the biggest bridges, and just having fun with other elements of Texana, as it's called. And used to be that my books were for sale at Buc-ee's, which is
Buc-ee's.
Buc-ee's.
Okay, I didn't know that they had books.
They did once upon a time. This was my point. This is where I was going. I used to say, whenever your books are at Buc-ee's, you've hit the height of literary excellence. And they did have books for a while, but I guess that it wasn't a genre that sold well for them as a product line. Books did not sell well, I suppose, because most people were there for brisket.
They're
there for food or hats or T-shirts or whatever.
Right. And the books were confusing.
The books were taking up space when they could have hats
or pigskins.
Yeah. So they had. They have some books in the way of cookbooks, et cetera.
Okay.
But I was kind of sad to see the books go, because they are a kind of temple to Texana in a way. But I understand they run a business, and if it's not moving, then they need something else in that space to move, because they got a lot. They got a lot of overhead in those places.
They do.
And then but at H-E-B, a lot of your bigger H-E-B stores, they'll carry stories from Texas there. Amazon by far sells more, and I sell almost as many books through Audible as I do through the print version.
Very nice. I think it is a state law that if you do have any books, there must be Texana somewhere that.
Yeah, you got to have it.
Yeah,
you got to have that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if it isn't a law, it should be.
But I appreciate you running my stories.
Well, we greatly appreciate the stories, and there is a secret that is connected to those stories that with the erudition, the twists and turns of plot and thought in your storytelling,
Plot and thought. I like that.
there's great fun. And that comes through in every phrase, and it is something that everybody should listen to because of fun.
That's absolutely. I always try to make sure there's fun. There's a humor in there somewhere.
Well, we thank you so much. It's great to talk with you, and we are so pleased that you came by to share some more of your stories, and we look forward to so many more. So happy to have you with us, Dr. W.F. Strong.
I do have a new collection coming out maybe next year. Texas A&M Press is going to publish stories from Texas' greatest hits. They're going to take the best of.
The best of, and you can go up to, I think, volume 4. Like you could have stories from Texas 1, 2, 3, 4, and best of. And then I think anytime we go beyond that,
And
it's
stories I couldn't tell on the radio.
that's right. That's right. The laughter behind the stories. Yeah.
I'm also on the Texas State Historical Board.
That's true.
And within that board, I'm on what they call the Handbook Committee. And so we're working on the, they have the music of Texas. They have a handbook on the music of Texas. And so we're looking at one specific to West Texas. The Handbook of West Texas cover a lot of the literature, particularly that originated in West Texas, or stories that cover West Texas or have their roots in West Texas.
The Pecos area and Lubbock. And,
Well, Giant, for instance.
oh, of course. Yeah.
There's the Texas story is based obviously out there in Marfa, and then you have a lot of McMurtry stories are out there, and No Country for Old Men. I mean, so many of the Texas, the heart of Texas literature really finds itself in West Texas.
And what is the name of that organization again?
Texas State Historical Association.
And they have a website that folks can check out? Okay,
TSHA.
great.
And the great thing, the Handbook of Texas that they produce, the Texas Almanac, but the Handbook of Texas is online completely, and it's free. So almost anything that you Google, like if you Google Sam Houston, that handbook entry will pop up, and you'll get the official Texas historical kind of Wikipedia understanding of Sam Houston.
Isn't somebody doing some audio versions of that too?
Yeah. The Autio, the travel app, they have partnered with the Texas State Historical Association to take a lot of the stories in the handbook and convert them to the oral form, because most of them are kind of written. And I've narrated about 200 of those stories. So when you travel across Texas, if you get the Autio app, when you get close to like Judge Roy Bean's house, the GPS will kick in the story about Judge Roy Bean. So, it's like 3 minutes, but it tells you in short form why he's known and why he's famous. And as always, try to make it humorous, to entertain you as you learn.
Right. It's like having a guided tour on your trip.
It is. It's very cool. Very cool.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Really appreciate it. We'll look forward to the next stories.
Okay. Ciao.
Hi, KXIQ listeners. This is Michael Quantz with the Brownsville Society for the Performing Arts, here to tell you about our podcast, Brownsville Matters. Everyone in Brownsville has a story to tell, and these are the stories. We broadcast these stories every Friday at 5 p.m. and every Sunday at 3 p.m. on KXIQ 105.1 FM on your radio dial. You can also catch these stories rebroadcast on our YouTube channel for Brownsville Society for the Performing Arts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and smash the notifications if you want more information about these stories that you watch and listen to.